saying really is true. Like pressure is a privilege. And too often when we focus on just our sport, we're really not giving enough attention to the other parts of us and the other things that we know are just going to make us feel more well-rounded. The more tunnel vision you can be on your goals, the better.
Megan Cannon, welcome to the Love All Life podcast. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, thank you for joining. And for those of you who are listening, Megan is a former college athlete and also currently now a mental health therapist specializing for athletes. So this is definitely a field that I believe is very important in my eyes because in the tennis world and beyond, you need people to help you, not just on the court, but off the court as well. So again, thank you, Megan, for joining. And before we get into your story, I want to start with some improv questions. I know you're a former athlete, and I know athletes tend to dwell in the past and try to live out dreams that maybe they thought they could have lived out. So you just do your best and answer these questions. If you could become your favorite athlete, who would it be and why?
Oh, wow. I think my current favorite, and I was a soccer player, but I also played basketball, is I have loved following Caitlin Clark. I really loved her confidence and paving the way for this elite status of women in sports. And I think she seems to have handled it really well. Just a ton of pressure on her shoulders. And so between her confidence and her resiliency, she's definitely someone I look up to.
Yeah, that's awesome. I've enjoyed seeing her journey as well. And especially with her, battling all the off court issues. Again, that's something that a lot of athletes aren't that good at. So again, shout out to her because she is, leading a legacy for young women.
Yeah. Yeah. She's had to learn. I don't know how well she does it, but quieting the noise, which is, I'm sure, something we'll talk about today.
Oh, yeah. No, we'll get into that for sure. With the next question, what is your biggest sports accomplishment?
That's an easy one. So I did play soccer in college at Western Carolina University. And from our junior to senior year, we went from the one of the worst records in the NCAA to one of the best in our conference. And so that turnaround, I think, going from like 4 wins to like 20 wins or something was the highest in the NCAA. And through winning the conference tournament, we got to go play UNC Chapel Hill in the first round of the NCAA playoffs. And that was like peak moment, living out all the dreams, getting to play the Tar Heels and only losing 2-0. So couldn't be mad about it for the last game.
That's awesome. Did you face any former pros?
Yeah. So at that time, Heather O'Reilly was on the team. She's probably was like the biggest name on that squad that year.
Okay. Awesome. Yeah. I know for me, tennis, obviously, is a big sport and I had the privilege of winning, a lot of local tournaments, but I'd say my favorite moment was winning my high school state tournament before I went off to college. And I think that really gave me a big boost of, not only confidence. I know when athletes tend to accomplish something, they don't just take that accomplishment, they understand the life lessons that they learned from it. But no, that's awesome. Love hearing those accomplishments. And with the last one, if you had to do it all over again, what would you change about your athletic journey?
I think I might have tried harder. As I reflect back and, I have my own kids now who are in sports, and it's kind of like holding a mirror up to yourself and the things that you say and you repeat and what you believe to know to be true. And I married a former professional baseball player. And so we are just like, we're in it and like we love sports. That's what we do. And so sometimes when we're thinking about how to like support our kids, I reflect back to my mom used to like force us to go out and dribble and do extra reps. And I think I just got by on a natural athletic ability. And so part of me wishes like, man, if I'd actually like lived up to my full potential and done a little bit extra, where could I have been? But you live and you learn. I don't have any major regrets, but that's something I definitely consider now at being a few years removed.
I like that answer because I think every athlete could say that no matter how successful they were. I know I look back on my journey with tennis, playing Division I tennis at UNCG, North Carolina, Greensboro. I definitely would say if I could put just a little bit more, let's say extra practice hours, say maybe I'm working on my serve ground strokes, it definitely goes a long way. And I think it is a lesson for young athletes. The little that you do when no one is watching does pay big dividends. So yeah, thank you. That is obviously important. We should always, take the initiative to do more no matter what the cause.
Yeah.
All right. So
when no one's watching.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was saying when no one's watching, that's really when a lot of the breakthrough happens. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. So I want to get into your personal story of how you got into sports, and leading up to that, what led you to dive into the therapist world when it comes to helping athletes now?
Yeah. I was lucky enough to have a very sports focused family. And so both my mom and my dad were big sports fans. My dad started coaching us in basketball at a really young age. I have an identical twin sister. So when oftentimes I might say we, because we just did everything together. And I also had an older sister who kind of paved the way in a lot of the sports, and she played college basketball. My twin sister played college soccer. So we just kind of were in this sports culture and just kind of knew that's what we were working towards. And so I got to play basketball all the way through pretty much my junior year in high school, where the coaches kind of made us pick a sport. And so picked soccer, knew that was the future, and was lucky enough to be able to go play in college and have an amazing 4 years full of a lot of highs and lows, and living in the middle of nowhere, which we were both Southern Conference, but we didn't have a men's tennis team, but we had women's soccer at Greensboro. So they were always really good. So they were a rival of ours. But yeah, and so had, an amazing 4 years, and like so many athletes, graduated with no clue what I wanted to do. I majored in what I would have called just something easy, which was communications. Had very little work experience except for in my college's athletic department. And so again, like so many of us, we finished like, I'm going to continue to work in sports because that's all I know. And so I moved to Charleston and started off interning at the Citadel in their athletic department. Bounced around departments there, ended up working for the River Dogs, still kind of holding on to that dream of staying in sports. And then after a couple of years, realized that maybe my path was a little bit more directed into working individually with athletes. And so I went back to grad school and got my school counseling degree, where I was a school counselor locally for 12 years. So I actually coached tennis, JV tennis, for a couple of years, where coach might have been generous. I was kind of like a manager, because they were all leaps and bounds, way more than what I knew. Although I love tennis so much. But I don't think I'm qualified to coach it at that level. And so, yeah, just had, a great experience being in the schools, really understanding how young student athletes, the pressures that they have balancing school and academics. And a lot of it just were like flashbacks for me that I don't think I really remembered. And then fast forward on a wonderful career, I knew I just had a little bit more to give. And so I went back to school, got a couple classes, studied for the big licensure exam to be a licensed professional counselor. So that is taking that school counseling, but just elevating it and working more with traditional mental health concerns. And that led me to specializing in working with athletes. And so that's what I do now. I bridge the gap between mental health and performance, working on trauma in sport, injury support, any kind of like mental blocks, and also just, overall well-being, anxiety, depression, life situations that happen, because at the end of the day, these athletes are more than just athletes. And so, I look at them as very holistically and wholly, and be able to help them in sport, yes, but also just be the healthiest version of themselves that they can be.
Love to hear that, Megan, and shout out to SoCon Sports. I
So
enjoyed,
gone.
playing in that conference. It's funny. I know you had experience at Citadel. It was actually one of my first jobs when I moved to Charleston was being the assistant coach at the Citadel, working under Chuck Creasy. And
He's awesome.
yeah, he is. Yeah, he's definitely one of my biggest tennis mentors, and we have a lot of common off the court as well. But yeah, no, that's awesome. I mean, I remember even cherishing some of my journeys at UNCG and battling a competition. And from the outside looking in, people probably assume that the competition is maybe okay for a mid-major school, but every time I stepped on the court, it was a battle. And I can probably say the same for you, especially in soccer.
Yeah.
So with that, I want to get into the identity. And I think this is something big that a lot of athletes struggle with. And you and I have obviously a ton of experience on what it means, not just to be a successful collegiate athlete, but to handle the anxiety and pressure of what that actually means in forming a true identity. And most kids have an identity that's really not true. So my question to you is, when you're working with athletes, what is the thing that you preach the most when it comes to shaping their identity on and off the field?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's definitely something that comes up a lot, and you see the negative impacts when sport's over. When it's over, and you're like, now what? Who am I without this? And so, it's part of kind of deconstructing that negative belief of like, I'm nothing if I don't have sport, really does start at a younger age. And so, because I see a diverse population of athletes. For those who have a faith, that is kind of my starting off point, that we're able to like utilize that as like who you are in Christ. For those that's not important to them, then we're also incorporating the extra things of that. So like we say, like there's a lot of parts to us. We have the athletic part, but who are we outside of that? We have a lot of other roles in our life. We have, we're maybe daughter or son or friend or, lots of different things. And so we have to make sure we're giving attention to all those parts of us. And too often when we focus on just our sport, we're really not giving enough attention to the other parts of us, and the other things that we know are just going to make us feel more well-rounded. And so I always like to be able to say, what, if you're not doing your sport, what do you like to do for fun? And that actually stumps a lot of athletes. Like, I don't know, like, what does that actually mean? And so sometimes that looks like going back. I'll say, well, maybe before you got to high school, what did that look like? Or maybe before you got to middle school. And we have to kind of remind them what are the things that they like to do when it wasn't tied to performance. And so that is really the key. Is like, what is something that you just enjoy doing because that's what you like to do? And so, reminding them of that, or maybe coming up with some ideas to help them if they have some downtime, of areas to explore. Sometimes it's even saying, talk to your parents. Like if you don't remember, what were the things that you used to really enjoy and now you feel like you don't really have time for? And let's bring those back. Like, how can you incorporate that so that, yes, you are giving attention and focus to your sport, but you're also giving attention to you as a human, as well as the relationships in your life.
I like that part, how you said about, paying attention to yourself as a human in other aspects. I know for myself, right, my number one priority is my faith in Christ and my family, and then understanding how I can serve other people. I know going back to when I was in college, even though I had success on the court, my identity was still a little too much wrapped into my sport and wanting to be there for others off the court, when I should have just learned how to handle rest and do other things. And that is the part that I regret, especially in my college journey, is that I didn't take enough time for myself to explore other things that could make me enjoy life a lot better. Because as you know, the collegiate life and life in general with sports is very strenuous, is very tough. And if you don't have a balance of who you are, when push comes to shove, there's a good chance you might not make it, or you'll barely make it and you won't enjoy the journey. So that's just a lesson I know for the juniors and parents who are listening to this, is that learn about not just your identity of who you need to become, but what action steps can you take? So, but yeah, I love that, Megan. Anxiety is big, as you know. We encounter a lot of this in our academy that are working at LTP, and a lot of kids just have a big problem with understanding pressure.
Mm.
How do you communicate and help athletes when it comes to the area of battling not just their own anxiety, but the pressures of winning and losing?
Yeah. It is rampant. They, especially those are in individual sports, you see that, they oftentimes will take on a lot of extra pressure when it's just them. Yes, there's certainly anxiety in more in team sports, but it definitely is ramped up more on the individual sports, like exactly like tennis. And so with anxiety, I do a lot of psychoeducation. So just explaining what anxiety is, what its purpose is, and then really going into some education also on like our nervous system and the things that impact it. Because at the end of the day, we play our best, we feel our best when we have a regulated nervous system. And so when we are not in a high state and a really low state. And so I always spend time just educating the athlete on what that looks like, and ask them like, where do you fit in this? Are you kind of in this hyper arousal state, or are you kind of someone that's in like a hypo arousal state where that's a little bit leaning more towards like feeling really blah, depressive. A hyper would be more of like a highly anxious person. And so we get to know it, right? Anxiety, again, is not in itself bad. It is an alarm system for us. Like, we want to be able to have some level of anxiety because, one, it keeps us safe. To be able to know like, okay, am I in danger? And so that part of our body and our brain that is feeling activated is a good thing. And so, but it also can be a little faulty sometimes. So if we are feeling super anxious, that like we can't breathe, we're so sweaty, our stomach, like feels like we're about to throw up, then that's not ideal for performance, right? Like, we want to be in what would be considered that regulated flow state. And so we have to be able to work through just resetting nervous system and be able to recognize like what healthy anxiety feels like, because we want to feel a little charged, right? Like, when you step on that court, it's like you want to feel some excitement. You want to feel like this ready to play. And it's a good thing. It's becoming comfortable with it. And then also recognizing when it's prohibiting play of how, okay, maybe that's a sign there's some work I could do here. And so understanding anxiety, educating it, working on ways to calm down. And so there's a lot of different strategies in that can help support in that moment. But also sometimes it goes a little bit deeper. Sometimes, that anxiety is because of a past, what I would say like a trauma or an unfortunate situation that has just kind of gotten stuck in their brain that has just made everything not feel good. And so what that looks like is those, traumas get stuck back here in our brain where we don't really get to rationalize it and breathe our way out of it. And so that's the kind of sometimes the work that we need to do for those who are in really an elevated state to where maybe they had a former injury and they have a fear of return to play, maybe some sports embarrassment moments, maybe like failing at something, and that pressure just has like gotten to be so overwhelming that we have to almost do some reprocessing so that they can perform at their optimal ability. Because at the end of the day, that's what this is about. It's not about asking them to be someone they're not, a player that they're not. It's like, I want to be the best player I can be, and not have some of that other stuff holding me down.
I like that answer because a lot of people tend to think that anxiety is all bad. And it could be bad to a degree if you let it control you. But nervousness and anxiety is normal, especially in an individual sport where you have a little bit more pressure in yourself. And yes, you might have a team that's supporting you, for example, your coach, your physio, parents. But when you get on the court, you have to make decisions for yourself. You have to learn how to problem solve compared to a team sport where you're just relying on a little bit more people. And it's not to, let's say, knock down someone who's playing a team sport or anything like that. But I know from a tennis perspective, when I started playing junior tennis, it was a lot of pressure. It was a lot more pressure than what I expected in the beginning. I think obviously what helped me was the fact that I was an independent, I guess, learner and thinker, and I always wanted to do things on my own. So that's why I drifted towards tennis more so than team sports. But what also helped me is, playing other team sports and recognizing that I did need help in certain areas. But yes, the issue with anxiety and nervousness, I tell the kids at the academy is that it's going to happen. You're going to get nervous. You're going to get tight. That's not necessarily the issue. The issue is, do you want to go through it or not?
Yeah.
Do you have I'd say, confidence to really go after what you want and just be willing to handle that failure? So, but yeah, that's the great answer. So when it comes to obviously individual sports, you've been around tennis. I'd like to know what your advice would be to someone who's playing an individual sport like tennis or golf, for example. How would you communicate how to handle pressure consistently? Because I find at times the kids that I'm working with now, they play the sport of tennis and they don't understand that they have to learn how to problem solve. They have to learn also how to become their biggest cheerleader when things aren't going their way. So how would you communicate a healthy message on how to learn how to conquer things on your own and not have to have the reliability of having someone say something to you all the time?
Yeah. And it's hard because we like that positive reinforcement. And a lot of the ways, like it's necessity. Like we're not created to be on an island by ourselves and have it all figured out. And so while we need those positive voices in our life, at the end of the day, it is on you. And so you are the one out there performing, and that pressure, the saying really is true. Like pressure is a privilege. And so if you feel that pressure, it's because this is important to you. And so even just going back to like the why, like why are you doing this? Like what, it's a choice at the end of the day. And so why tennis? Why do you want to commit so much of your time to do that? And even just that reminder for them when things get to be really tough is like pulling back in their why, like why do all this? And let them really break it down. And what that does is it also floods them with like positive emotions and memories. And so maybe it takes them back to when they were a little kid and they were playing and they were hitting and they used to, they were watching the US Open and they're like, gosh, I want to be just like Serena. And so being able to, kind of take it back and just say, okay, if we're going to move forward, sometimes going back to remembering their why. And then also recognizing where really is the pressure coming from. So that's an important, is it self-induced? Is it because a parent is putting a lot of additional pressure on you? Is it a coach that's putting a lot of pressure on you? And so really, if that is becoming where it's the performance is impacted negatively, that's what I want to know. I'm like, what are the voices you're hearing in the head? What are the negative thoughts that are coming from you? Is it your voice? Is it someone else's voice? And when we can get to that, then there's some work that can be done to be able to reframe maybe some of those negative thoughts that like, I can't do it. Like, I'm not good enough. This girl, she's ranked higher than me. She's undefeated, and all of these things that will make us lose before we even start. And so the pressure to be able to perform is saying, you know what? Sport's a game, and like all of this is a gamble. I don't know how this is going to go, but being able to enjoy the process and recognizing that, yes, being an elite tennis player or an athlete is the goal for a lot of people and probably a lot of the people you work with, but also like I'm learning so many other things about myself, like so much about the dedication that comes from sport are transferable life skills. And so some even reminding themselves about that. And so I'll do like a report card with them to where we're talking about the different areas that have nothing to do with performance. And so I'm like, I don't care how many aces you have. I don't care, how many games or sets that you won. What are the other things that we want to evaluate and look at? Like, what's your attitude like? What is your coachability like? What is your resiliency like? What is your approach to the game and even just like the setup? And so reframing maybe that like where that pressure is and say, okay, well, what are the things that we can control? Because so often too, they get stuck in the thought that what they can't control. We have to remind them, these are the things that are in your control. Like your attitude, 100% in your control. Your how you relate to your teammates or your coaches, 100% in your control. And so when we remind them of that like autonomy, then they can almost like, puff out their shoulders a little bit and say, you know what, like this isn't happening to me. I'm choosing this. And if I can change, maybe tweak some things, I can relinquish some of that pressure so that I really can enjoy this for what it is at this moment, because no one's guaranteed tomorrow, especially within sports.
I love that answer, and especially when you talk about joy, because in my journey, especially when I was young, I loved tennis. I was passionate about it. I love the individuality of the game, of how I can create my own thing on my side of the court and make my opponent suffer. But when things weren't going my way, oftentimes I just didn't enjoy it because I wanted everything to go my way. And I think this is a big lesson for juniors, young athletes. Doesn't matter what sport you play. Why are you doing it? Do you enjoy it? And do you feel that the process or the journey that you're on is benefiting you, not just what you're doing in your sport, but off the court as well? There are a lot of issues, as you see, with athletes, because no matter how skilled or talented they are, they tend to put everything into a basket in terms of their results. And this is where, obviously, you've heard of the growth mindset versus fixed mindset, where the growth mindset is you're focused on the journey and the destination, and you're learning about yourself, as you said, while you understand how to compete in your sport, compared to the fixed mindset where you're just fixed on having your way, and the ego of that person is not allowing them to grow regardless of what they're doing in their respective sport. So I think that is big, because athletes in general, they just don't understand the fact of you need to know why you're doing something. And I think that's very big. So when we talk about just kind of sports in general and just, handling pressure and anxiety, we've talked about those things. What would you say the biggest problem is with athletes, specifically young athletes, when it comes to just basic distraction and their mental health?
There's a lot to pull their attention away.
That was a big question.
There's a lot of noise out there. So obviously, we got to touch on social media, the relationship someone has with it. Is it healthy? How does it make you feel? How much time are you spending on it? And so, at the end of the day, it is a time suck. Young people as well. It's targeted to keep them scrolling, keep them going. Your brain doesn't fully develop for a female early 20s, for a male late 20s. And so many of these athletes, their brain's not even fully developed. And mine, as a fully developed brain, I still get stuck into it. And so, knowing that here is something that, yes, it brings connection, but it also there are some harmful side effects to it. And so if we get too attached to what people are saying, what's going on around us, we aren't present in the moment. We're so worried about what maybe someone posted about us, what our competitor, what kind of maybe sponsorship deal they got, or definitely now with just a lot of rage about commitments, right? So for your junior, seniors, maybe even sophomores, of I got offered here, I got committed here. What's the first thing that happens to that? It's blasted all over social media, right? And so, maybe you're not there yet. Maybe you're like, I'm probably a year off and I don't even know if that's going to be me. Well, what happens to your own, you start to compare yourself, and that can feel really bad. Why is all of these good things happening to that person and not to me? And then you start focusing on the other as opposed to what you can control. And so the social media, it is, it's great. It's where we are. It's 2026, but to be able to take some time and bring some self-awareness for the athlete to say, how am I utilizing it? And do I have a healthy relationship? And if not, can, by me maybe reducing time, putting some safeguards or barriers up, what would that be like for me? Would that free up some time to do some other things, right? We could waste an hour scrolling like that. And maybe you have that hour of free time that you could be doing something different. Maybe something that that activity that, we were trying to find different hobbies or things that you enjoy. You used to paint or used to color, do art. And now, all that time is now filled up oftentimes by scrolling on our phone. And so it's great, but it also, like, you have to take a moment and just say, you know what, I don't have to be like everyone else. I should be different. And one of the fastest ways to like tank your self-confidence is also just to see what people are saying about you online.
Yeah, that's so big. And I love that online reference because now we have so many apps. I tell you, I don't know if you're familiar with UTR. The UTR is basically, the tennis rating that juniors look at, and it's this number. And then you have the big number and then the decimal point and then the two numbers. And they're just constantly checking it. I'm like, guys, you're just wrapped in your identity in this number, and you're forgetting how to compete. And when I grew up, we didn't have that system. It was just rankings, tournaments, and then you understood what championships were important and the rivals, and that was it. And I didn't get, I don't know, social media until I was a senior in high school, which is kind of crazy to think about because now I see these kids and now they have accounts. I don't know if you've probably seen, Manage My Parents. And now people are kind of big into this following. And I'm not against, obviously, getting a following or content because I do a good amount of things with Instagram. But at the same time, I'm thankful that I was not told that my identity or my purpose or anything like that was going to be wrapped in about what somebody said online, because it's something I say that it not only just distracts young athletes, but it also tends to make them into people that they shouldn't be in terms of how they behave, how are they communicating with coaches, their parents. It does have a transformation process, in my opinion, that makes them want to believe that their identity and their self-worth and everything that they do, whether it's following, likes, has to be wrapped up in that. So that is big, Megan. I think, athletes, if we can get just less distracted, I think we'll have better performance. Yeah. Okay, now with the last thing, just to wrap it up, if you could give one piece of advice to a young athlete, your number one advice specifically, what would that be, and how would you want them to transform their life?
Stay in your lane. I say this so often. Because we've talked about the distractions of all the things. And so often they get caught up in what other people are saying or thinking or doing, or the problems with coaches, or they're not doing this. I'm not getting, the injustice of it all. And so it would be to stay in your lane. And even just like, I love the visual of like, if you're driving down a highway and I'm driving and I am so focused on what the car in the left lane were doing, what's going to happen to me? I'm veering off, right? Like I'm not paying attention. I'm not being safe. I might cause an accident. Okay. But if I am driving down the highway, and as I should be aware of what's going around me, right? Like I should see the cars that are passing by or going slowly, but I'm not changing my course to keep up with them. And so stay in your lane. Yes, quiet the noise around you, focus on the things you control, but also just like, that's your why too, of like, what's my destination? My destination does not have to be the same as the car riding the highway next to me, right? So like, I'm going to be the best me driver. I'm going to be the best me athlete that I can be by staying focused and focusing on the things I can control. And if I start to like be aware that a car is driving faster than me, maybe I pause and I say, you know what, could I go a little bit faster? If I'm safe under the speed limit, yeah, okay. So like that awareness is a healthy thing, right? Like we want to be aware of our competition and what else is out there. But if we're so focused on it, then it is going to distract us from what my goal is and how they can achieve it. And so that is by far probably the most consistent theme of something I'm always working on with athletes is like, what does that look like for you to stay in your lane? And so are you doing the things that are going to get you to that potential end destination? And if you're not, why not? What's holding you back, right? What are the barriers there? Maybe we can work through that. Is it anxiety? Is it like a past injury? Is it a mental block? Like, what are the things? Like, let's work on that And then also let's work on just like staying focused on the things that we can control, not the noise all around us, because it can be all consuming, whether it be the social media, what other people are saying, our coaches, our family, the pressure. Like there's just so much that the more tunnel vision you can be on your goals, the better.
Love that answer. Comparison can often seem like a thief because in the world of sports, we're tending to focus on other people, comparing ourselves, and thinking that that's the answer. It's easy for an individual sport, as I know, because you have all these competitors, all these rivals, and you see them every other weekend. And it's not to say that you can't pay attention to who's doing the best and what is required to perform at the peak level. Obviously, you know that you've experienced that as a former collegiate athlete. And for the athletes that are listening, for the parents who are watching, this is gold advice, because at the end of the day, your journey is your journey. It's not someone else's. It's not your parents. It's not your great great grandmother or what they did back in the day. And you might have some people who have had great accomplishments in life or in their family. You might have peers that have experienced some great things when it comes to achieving what they've achieved in their athletic world. But at the end of the day, how are you showing up for yourself? What is your identity? How are you truly handling anxiety, pressure consistently? What is the growth process like? And are you staying in your lane? So thank you, Megan, for the advice. And once again, thank you so much for joining the Love All Life podcast. It was a pleasure to have you. And hopefully, maybe in the future, I can have you on again if this pod gets bigger. This was gold advice for everybody who's listening. And this was, really a dream come true for you, not only to just be on this platform, but to give advice for young athletes who are looking for a solution on and off the court.
Yeah. It's hard out there, guys. It's not easy. And, that's the biggest thing is it doesn't, if people think it's easy, everyone would do it. And so just being able to take care of yourself and know that there's support out there if you feel like you need it.
I want to thank you guys for tuning in to the Love All Life podcast. If you're watching this on YouTube, please hit that like button, share, and subscribe. It would help the channel greatly. And if you're a Spotify listener, definitely give it a like and a follow. In the meantime, episodes will be dropping weekly, and I look forward to seeing you guys next time. God bless. G-Man is out.